You were told to be quiet. You were told to shrink. You were told that love meant pain. Here you are. Here you rise. Welcome to Powerful Woman Rising from Narcissistic Abuse. The show where we break the chains of narcissistic abuse, reclaim our power, and step into the unstoppable force we were always meant to be. I'm Azadeh, best-selling author, narcissistic abuse educator, and coach to high achievers. Together, we'll uncover the truth, rewrite our stories, and ignite the power within. It's time to rise, it's time to heal, and it's time to take your life back. Welcome to my other episode, my next episode, Powerful Woman Rising from Narcissistic Abuse. Today I have an extraordinary guest. Her name is Vanessa Reiser. She's an author, therapist, and an Ironman. I mean, wow. Talk about resilience mentally, physically, spiritually, in all levels. Welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. Let's just jump right into it. I want to know right away how you literally went from a therapist to an author from Ironman, right out of an abusive relationship. Tell me about that gray area between the abuse and to the point of rising. Tell me about that.
So I basically, in 2020, I was able to get out of a relationship. And at the time I was already a therapist and I was already an Ironman, two-time Ironman. So I had done a lot of work already in terms of my career and hobbies, etc. But I hadn't really shifted or pivoted into such a specific niche until I kind of experienced it. And I had this idea in 2020 that I would try to run across the state of New York in a wedding dress to raise awareness for narcissistic abuse. And so I ran 285 miles across the state of New York to raise awareness for narcissistic abuse. And that got me a ton of media attention. And then that got me the book deal and kind of snowballed. But yeah, before I even went through this, I had a pretty good understanding of what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I was definitely very athletic. But even with all of those accolades, it really, really knocked me on my ass. It was really, really hard to go through. I mean, that was a full-blown trauma.
Oh, absolutely. Did I hear you right? 285 miles running?
Yeah, I ran across the state of New York. I think it was a marathon a day for 11 days. It was in the New York Times and People Magazine, the New York Post, etc. I'm very proud of that experience. And then we actually traversed New Jersey, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. This year, we're going to be doing Rhode Island. And then we have a new initiative where we're going to be running around the family courthouse to highlight what a lot of my clients experience in the judicial system as it relates to family court. And so, yeah, there's been a ton of silver linings outside of that experience.
My God. Tell me, was the book, the Ironman, and schooling all at the same time, or was it one after the other? I mean, am I witnessing a bionic woman?
No, I graduated from USC in 2016. Um, and then pandemic happened in 20. I did Ironman. I think I did Ironman 2015 and 16. I did two of them. And then I did, pandemic happened 2020. And that after that, the run was in 2021. That was the first run. And then the book I published or Hachette published last year, October.
Oh, just last year. Okay. Okay. So how long have you been a therapist?
Since 2016.
Okay, so dealing with the narcissist in your life, you were already a therapist.
I was a therapist. I was working in the Bronx at an outpatient mental health clinic, very kind of triage style, working for the Jewish Board, which is one of the biggest nonprofits in New York. And I loved it. They had a satellite program at the Bronx High School of Science. And, just typical New York social worker, sort of slogging through and seeing all the things. And I loved it. And then I found myself in this relationship and it changed my life. And now, I only treat clients that are dealing with narcissistic abuse or dealing with cult abuse. And so that's what I do specifically now.
So as a therapist, what was the questionings running in your mind when you were, because we all have that moment where we uncode it, get a moment of clarity, and it all makes sense. This is a narcissist, period. When that moment of conviction and clarity hit, and then on the other hand, knowing you're a therapist, how did you navigate your healing? How did you navigate every day from that moment on?
I remember figuring out what it was. And I remember like the room spinning because I was like, whoa. I really never knew what this was. They don't really teach you
Right,
about this at university.
right.
There were, some sort of classes, I'm sure, that touched on diagnosing and personality disorders, but there was not really much on domestic violence and certainly not, this insidious form of domestic violence, which is psychological and emotional abuse. So no, there was not really an understanding. The only thing I remember knowing about it was that they didn't really have empathy. And I thought, I can't be with somebody who doesn't really have empathy. That's not an option. I could never imagine myself being in a relationship with somebody who doesn't experience empathy. And that was enough for me to leave. And that's when I did. Thank God my girlfriend was there to help me just sort of flee. But that, that was not something I really understood until, yeah, like you said, it had that moment where it was like, oh my God. And then I began to really study it, like most do, sort of going down the rabbit hole on TikTok and Instagram. And I was like, holy shit. And then I started to talk to people about it. I started to research it. I started to bring in clients that had similar experiences, and then they would reflect back all of this stuff, and I would learn so much from my clients. And then over time, it kind of just got cemented in my mind what the characteristics were, and I feel pretty, adept at it now. But it took years of me trying to understand, and still I'm always connecting things to this day, like, oh, okay, so that's what's going on here. But it's really very dynamic. It's not just one, characteristic. It's just a recipe of them.
Oh, absolutely. And then we deal with the cognitive dissonance. He is, he isn't. He loves me, he's abusive. And then having to navigate that. And that's why a lot of us continually post on social media about this because of the torturous cognitive dissonance. How did you dissolve it? Was it the girlfriend and the clients and the research? Were those the three navigations to help you concrete the truth about this relationship?
I think the post-separation abuse became so severe that I had no choice but to accept that this was somebody who was very unwell because it was so intense that there was no room for forgiveness. It was like a full-on war. And that warfare kind of, made me realize what I was dealing with. This wasn't going to be a standard breakup. This was going to be just a bludgeoning of me. And it was, and I had to sort of fight back. And that cognitive dissonance kind of went away really quick when the mask went off. It was like, okay, there's no confusion now.
Right. When you start pulling away, you start saying no, when you start breaking up, that's when they try harder. That's when they come out full force. We thought we saw a monster. Now we see the true demon, right?
Right. Yeah, that was a big wake up call.
Tell me some of the ways you healed, some of the ways you reclaimed your life and your mind. your thoughts and your emotions? How did you reclaim that?
I think a lot of my best experiences and healing moments are on my runs to this day.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm dealing with any kind of pressure, whether it's related to a personal experience or any kind of dip in my mood, my runs will quickly pull me out of that. No matter what, I really would say that has been my empowering experience. And certainly the run across New York was absolutely transformative because I was healing, I was helping others heal and feel seen, sort of checked all the boxes. But for me, along with other things like having tremendous support through a brilliant attorney and friends and therapists and life coaches and everyone kind of carrying me through that. Um, it was really, and family, it was really my running that had my head get clear. I think when you think about things and you move your body, it really better gets cemented into your mind just through that experience. And so I would say for me, running was the single most healing experience for me. I can't say enough about how that helps my headspace.
Oh, I run not as much as you, but I run in the mornings on the treadmill. I mean, ask about transformation. It happens in the gym. It happens in the gym. And so I totally get that. Because we can have talk therapy, we can read and read and read and read and listen and watch, but the transformation really happens when we move our body.
Hmm.
How do you handle clients now with going through this process? Do you find yourself getting re-triggered often or is it lessened?
No, I don't think so. I don't have that really as much anymore,
Yeah, yeah.
at all. I think the things that trigger me lately are random sort of experiences. Like, I had this one client and her parents were being threatened with deportation, right? And she was trying to
Yeah.
translate. So I think it kind of goes on a case by case basis. And I remember thinking, okay, don't cry, Vanessa, don't cry. Because I was watching this poor child try to figure out at a young age how she was going to navigate her parents and that. So I think more macro issues because I did go to school to study community organizing and social policy. So I get really upset by people who are disenfranchised when they struggle. That really freaks me out. So if I see, women who are dealing with things or Black people or people in the LGBTQ, I get like kind of concerned about those that really need help. And so I think those things trigger me far more than something that would be a more micro experience. It's more the macro, like watching, things like happen to Mother Earth or, things like this really kind of freak me out. So for me, it's not a direct connection. It's just that I don't like to watch people struggle.
Oh, well, yeah, because we're hyper empathy. Our hyper empathy gets triggered, not like others.
Right.
To completely relate to that.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about dating. What are you dating now? Do you,
I am. Oh
are
God,
you?
girl.
Tell me, how do you
Ah.
navigate that now?
That is very challenging because I feel like I'm very mindful and I'm very selective and I'm very careful because I know what the red flags look like. And I'm certainly not going to risk my sovereignty by dating somebody and making excuses for their bad behavior. And so I'm just very discerning. I'm looking for a needle in a haystack, a unicorn. It's not going to be easy for me. But I'm still in the game. I still date, but it's hard because I'm looking for something very specific.
Right, right. And have you had any other narcissists since the big one?
I would say probably I've met some. I've
Mhm.
not dated them exclusively because I can kind of see it pretty readily. So I'm not sure there was a few questionable ones in there, but like not entirely sure, because after a few months, if something just doesn't feel like a good fit, I'm going to bail.
Yeah.
I'm going to spend a ton of energy trying to fix people. And so I'll just move on. But it isn't easy. And it's not just me. I think a lot of my friends are similarly like it's a tricky situation to find a good match. A lot of my women friends specifically tell me this because I'm not sure that a lot of the guys that we're dating are doing the work on themselves. It's very hard to find somebody who is evolved and kind of insightful and all of that. And so it has been challenging. I'm still in it, but it's not easy.
Absolutely. It is hard. And then the navigation of it and waiting to see the shoe's gonna fall or if they're gonna reveal themselves or is this a trigger or is it reality? Which is it? Which is it?
Mm-hmm.
Vanessa, have you had girlfriends or family members after you awakened to this dynamic? Did you reflect back and say, family members, girlfriends, mentors, business partners, people on social media, did you encounter a larger level of narcissism after you awakened to this one?
I did. I also, it took me a long time to not blame myself. That's a really big thing. I think a lot of people, because when you go through this, you end up losing a lot of friends sometimes because they
Yes,
are subscribing to the narrative or the smear campaign. So for a while, I was like, is it me? Am I the narcissist like this? So it took, it's still hard for me. I still have that inner dialogue that isn't altogether perfect where I might could feel like, maybe I'm the problem because you're outnumbered and you lose a lot of people and it's kind of icky. Um, but then there are moments where I'm like, you know what? I could see that in this person, or I could see a groupthink scenario where a lot of these people are doing it as a collective, subscribing to a narrative about me or something like this. And so I have seen sometimes like there's a hierarchy in some of those social circles. And then if you look at the helm, who's the leader of the pack, sometimes you can find who the narcissist is in those scenarios. So
yes, yes.
sometimes I see that a little bit, right? Like I can kind of envision that that might be the case. Obviously, I can't diagnose somebody who's not in my care, but I have wondered about that for sure.
How do you feel about this? How do you feel about the energy? Have you ever been, how do you feel about feeling other people's energy? Now, again, after you've left this relationship, more in tune. See, for me, when I left the relationship, I went through deep down healing and I faced myself, faced the relationship, the dark night of the soul. After I healed from that, I was so much more in tune to other people's energy and connecting it to their motives. Do you feel more advanced, I want to say, in your energy in picking and discerning people's motives and energy and what they're doing? Not that you're trying to figure people out, but you just pick up on certain energies. Do you feel that after this relationship?
I do. And I would say that is one of the most tremendous gifts. And,
Yes.
Dr. Ramani has said this to me before. Um, trust yourself because if you get nothing else from this bullshit that you've gone through, is that you have that discerning eye. So you should question everybody and you should
Yep.
trust yourself. And um, I do my best to do that because I think that is a tremendous silver lining. It's like you kind of could see people for who they really are. And that is a tremendous gift.
It's the best.
Yep.
And how do you trust it? How do you trust it? That's the
It's not
hard,
always easy yet. It's not always
right?
easy because then you're like, oh, am I being too hard? Am I being too much? Am I overthinking this? Am I analyzing?
Yes.
I've gotten better at that. The circle is very small.
Yes.
I've
Yes.
been getting better at, just trusting myself and being true to myself. I actually had this amazing conversation with my friend Dave this morning, and I was talking about the dating experiences, and he was like, "Just be you, just be yourself, and the right people will be around you." And it's really, really true. And I'm so glad that I have those resources like Dave and other friends, but I think I've gotten better and better at that. It's not always a perfect science, but I try to listen to myself, be authentic, and the wrong people will go away and the right people will hopefully be attracted.
That's so the truth. But getting to that place requires some solitude, some alone time,
Oh yeah.
right?
I mean, I went through that breakup in 2020.
Right, 5 years.
So yeah, it was the perfect timing to sit in the muck of it because of COVID. So there was nowhere to go. There was nothing to do other than sit in my shit. Like I had to like actually go through hell and manage all of that without any distraction. And I think that was a blessing as well.
I agree. I agree. That time of COVID was a lot of my healing too, right when COVID hit. It was perfect for us to have an excuse to get away from everybody and everything to go in and do the deep healing. But then we awaken and now we're discerned and we have all of this kind of all of this new superpower, right? We're awake now. We're
Yeah.
awake, we can see, we can hear, we are so attuned to so many things. And to come and to show back up differently, what was that like? Because when we heal, we organically change. We are completely different people. What was that like showing up in family, friends, situations as a healed woman? What did that feel like?
I think that was a great experience because when I began to like peek out from
Yeah.
hell, I saw the real soldiers, the real friends that were not going to leave my side. And that became very cozy. I know these people are really going to be so supportive and just I can be myself and I don't have to feel um anything other than just love. They were really, it was scary because I lost a lot of friends in that process, and that was a gift. And so I think having this small circle of people that are absolutely true blue, um and I put them in my book. I named every single one of them by name specifically and what they meant to me because it was so scary and destabilizing to imagine that there was going to be some narrative around me being crazy, like so many people go through, of me being, all of the things that he was going to characterize me as or mischaracterize me as. And people were going to buy into that because I'm really tough and I'm really outspoken and like,
Mhm.
so it would work, right? People would be like, oh, she looks like she's a bitch, this kind of thing. It was probably her. And I was really scared of that because it was in some ways believable, because I'm so tough and outspoken. And I thought, oh boy, I'm screwed. This is really scary because he was so manipulative and he could, play the role. But my true friends stayed by me. Thank God.
Thank God. So you really went through a full-blown smear campaign. Is
Yeah.
it all gone now?
There are some things that continue to linger, but it's definitely been a good amount of time. So there's, less involvement for sure.
Mhm. Do you have children?
I do. I have a 25-year-old son. He'll be 26 in June. And that's it, just one child.
And how was it? How did the relationship between you and him, was there changes? Any down heart to heart talks about what's going on? Or did you just want to keep him protected from it all? How did you navigate mothership during the smear campaign?
Yeah. My son is, I had him kind of young, and so we were very, very, very close.
Mm.
And he stood by my side through the whole thing and never ever um, left my side. He's a tremendous person in general, a very sure-footed character. He has a great disposition, but he was always very, very loyal and wonderful in all the ways. I couldn't be prouder. So Anthony is my favorite. He's wonderful. And no, there were never any moments where I had to really get into it other than to explain, I guess, in the very first place, what was going on. And then I think over time he hears me with all my clients, like, sort of not that that there's a HIPAA violation, but I'm
Right,
familiar
right,
with like
right.
on the periphery that I'm, in the basement here doing all of this work. And I'm sure he's, looked at some of my book. Who knows if he's read the whole thing. But I think by now he could probably write a book about it because he understands what I've endured. He understands what it looks like, how to protect himself from people like this in the world, because they're everywhere.
They're everywhere. And do you believe, like Dr. Romney talks about, there's I think she says in, I think her statistics was every 10 there's 6 narcissists or something like that. Like it is on the rise. Narcissists are breeding narcissists.
Yeah. I had her laughing. We were at dinner once and I said, we're in a restaurant. I said, how many narcissists do you
Yeah.
think are in this room? And she was like, looks around. She's like, one at every table. I was like, oh shit, that's wild. Because when you think about that, go to dinner. The next time you're out to dinner, take a peek around. But yeah, so I think it's more abundant than we realize. We see the cultic family systems, we see abusers in certain church environments. And
Yes.
so there's no shortage of it. I mean, it's hard to say exactly, but I think they're everywhere.
Oh, absolutely. And churches is a really big place where they hang their coat.
Mhm.
They use the Bible as a vehicle to get
Yeah.
to your soul.
Yeah. And also, even if your church is not led by a narcissist, a sociopath, or a psychopath, what the church does by design is it primes you for servitude. So you're in this mode where you're going to be a servant, right, of the Lord or the deity. And so the narcissist is just in that environment potentially to find new victims to exploit because they know that you are going to be that character that's going to serve. So it's not necessarily that the preach or the pastor or the rabbi in that environment is the abuser, but in that realm somewhere is somebody that understands that this is a breeding ground for servitude. So they're going to be, ready to pounce. And so they gravitate towards those environments for that reason, because these are the perfect prey, so to speak.
Exactly. That's the word I was just thinking, the perfect prey. I've seen it, Vanessa, in recovery circles. I've seen it because I'm sober. I'm a sober alcoholic drug addict, 23 years. And I've
Oh, wow.
seen,
Congratulations.
thank you, thank you. Well, a lot of my addiction was around the narcissist, but to cope, to cope.
Right, right, right.
Um, but I see it. I see a lot of prey and predatory dynamics where people are desperate. And that's what it is. They're desperate for God, they're desperate for sobriety, or they're desperate to date. Can't be alone, gotta have a guy. All of these desperations breed predatory dynamics. And how do you become not a prey? You stop being a prey, you stop being desperate, you stop needing to have a man in your life. And do you ever deal with that? Like with clients, women that are leaving the narcissist, but they are in such deep withdrawal of the trauma bond that they start going on dating sites and start doing, they gotta date, they gotta date, they gotta be with somebody, they gotta be with somebody. It's just, can't be alone, can't be alone. How do you handle those kind of clients? And I'm just jumping around a little bit.
I only had, I think, like one though, because I think most of the people that come to me are so traumatized that they are absolutely in shock from it and take a big step back from that. So I have seen it, and generally those people find themselves in another relationship with a narcissist because they haven't done the work, right?
Yep, yep. Just another name,
Yeah.
just another name.
And that's the worst. You really want to take the time to do the work here, because if you don't, you will find yourself right in that relationship, something similar. And another mistake people make is that, let's say they have a particularly overt version of this, and the guy likes to devalue, and maybe he's physically abusive. And then they'll meet somebody new and they'll say, they'll gauge this new person against their former abuser and they'll say, well, he's nothing like him. He's this, he's that, he's this, he's that. But we have to understand this comes in different shapes and sizes, right? So the new relationship could be very covert, right? So
Yes.
somebody who's maybe not like that overt version, but this is a totally different animal. This is somebody who is going to be passive aggressive. So it's going to be like micro dosing. It's not going to be an acute trauma. It's going to be like death by 1,000 cuts. And so you have to be careful. I think those are more dangerous. I would prefer to have the sort of overt version of this and get like, okay, get out of it quick, than have the covert one who slowly like sucks your energy and like ruins your life. And so I think that's another mistake people make.
I think that's an excellent point. Excellent point. I think about the frog, right? The frog, how if you put it in hot water, it's going to jump out. But if you put it in normal water and slowly turn it up, it's going to adapt to it. And that's really a good analogy for the covert narcissist, the 1,000 cuts.
Yep.
I completely agree. I'm with you. The domestic violence for me was, I mean, he broke a beer bottle in my face. There was no I mean, it was, today I'm grateful for it because it wasn't these subtle little hints of a breakdown. It was that one. Well, there was other domestic violence prior to that, but that was you can't deny that. It's right here in your face. You
Hmm.
cannot deny that. But the
Yeah.
covert, and that's why we say covert's so dangerous, the most dangerous, because it's so sneaky, subtle, victim-y, sad, oozing in pain, where the over is just like bam, 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 and there's the abuse. You can name it, call it, and see it.
Yep.
So, Vanessa, tell us a little bit about your book. Is this,
Sure.
yeah, tell me, go right ahead. Just lay it out. Tell us about
Yeah.
your book.
So I wrote a book called Narcissistic Abuse, a therapist's guide to identifying, escaping, and healing from toxic and manipulative people. It was published by Hachette and came out in October of last year. The book aims to fuse the concepts of narcissistic abuse and cult abuse. So when I started to work with Mark Vicente from the Nexium cult, who had Keith Raniere at the helm, and he was famously having his minions brand people with his initials, and I began to see the characteristics were absolutely the same, I thought, holy shit, I was in a cult. So you can be in a cult of one, a cult of two, a cult of 5, 9, 5 million. It really matters not. At the helm is a narcissist, a sociopath, or a psychopath. Hard stop. So, these relationships that are interpersonal, just one on one, can be very cultic. And that aha moment for me was just a huge, huge big deal in my life. And I think we think of cults as happening in like a faraway land and like that could never happen to me and all of this. But when I saw the clinically what was happening, and it was definitely mind control, very sort of Pavlovian, positive reinforcers are used to mind control you.
Right.
That's when it occurred that I wanted to write a book about it. And so the book, really does talk quite a bit about cults because you can be in a cult. It can happen to you. It can happen to anybody.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So needed, so powerful.
Thank you.
Gosh, Vanessa, thank you so much for all you're doing to impact the world, to raise awareness, to write about it, to help others heal, and be a testimony of your own healing. It is so powerful because I see so many cases and I've had so many clients that have stayed over 20, 25, 30 years. Now their whole identity is around abuse. And and, so I'm so grateful and thank you so much
Thank
for your
you.
work. Yeah. And so tell us how we can find you. How can my viewers find you?
Sure. So my website is a therapist.net. You can find me on Instagram at Vanessa Reiser LCSW. I also have a nonprofit, tellatherapist.org, where we will refer you to a narc savvy clinician in your respective state. Um, and the book is available on Amazon.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here, Vanessa. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
I really appreciate that. Thanks.
You're welcome.